Our Tools Mastery module was woodworking, which involved constructing a birdhouse. We started off by taking the right safety precautions, so we put on our safety glasses, made sure we were wearing closed-toed shoes, and tied our hair back.
We first took our plank of wood and measured out the correct increments for the birdhouse. Making accurate measurements in this step was really important because if our pieces were not the correct sizes, they would not fit very well together when beginning to fasten the pieces together.
After measuring, we clamped our wood to the table and began the sawing process. We used 3 clamps during this process to ensure that our wood would not move with any forceful movements. After we had our pieces, we sanded using an orbit sander. We didn't need to use clamps for this process because we needed to access all sides of the board, so clamping would have been inefficient by only allowing us to sand one side at a time.
Then we had to measure and cut off the corners of the floor piece. Afterwards, we measured out where we would drill a hole in the front pieces. We then used a spade bit to make a hole. However, we encountered challenges when making this hole. For example, when we first used the spade bit, the drill was turning counterclockwise, which meant that the bit wasn't drilling into the wood. After changing the direction of the spade bit, the process became much easier.
Next, we made measurements for where we would drill the holes in our pieces. Before actually drilling, we picked out screws that were long enough to go through 2 pieces of wood. For this project, we were unable to find any screws that had a flat top.
After we had chosen our screws, we picked out a drill bit that was slightly smaller than the screw so that the screw wouldn't be too loose within the hole. After drilling the appropriate holes on the pieces, we began to join them together.
This was one of the most challenging parts of the project because it was difficult to find the best way to clamp the pieces together. Clamps were extremely useful in this part because the wood needed to be tightly held in the correct way so that the screw would hit both pieces of wood in the proper location.
After figuring out the most effective way of holding the pieces together, we began to drill the screws in. It was important to be accurate here as well because if the screws were incorrectly drilled, then the pieces might not have properly joined together.
In order to include a swinging door, we needed to include nails at the top of the right side. Lastly, we attached the roof to the rest of the birdhouse by drilling in screws where appropriate. Finally, we put the finishing touch on the birdhouse by attaching pom-poms to the edge of the roof.
If we were to make a second birdhouse, we would first drill all the holes on the pieces of wood being joined before screwing the pieces together. For example, we had only drilled a hole on one of the pieces but not the wood it was being attached to.
As a result, when we screwed the wood together, the wood split. In some cases, the screw had difficulty penetrating the second piece of wood, and the screw started to become stripped. Before it became a problem, we used a screwdriver to take out the screw, and then re-drilled the hole into the second piece of wood, and then rejoined the 2 pieces.
But in the end, we still created a functional birdhouse, and through a trial and error process, we learned how to use woodworking tools.